The case of Johnny Gosch, a 12-year-old paperboy who vanished without a trace on a seemingly ordinary September morning, has fascinated many true crime followers for years, and to this day it remains unsolved. Although his mother, Noreen, believes she knows what happened, and there appears to be evidence that supports her theory, police do not agree on this. The police authorities claim that there is no indication of what happened to Johnny on that morning, and the case has gone cold. Noreen has never stopped fighting for answers, and the answers appear to be clearer than law enforcement want us to believe. And as Noreen said, just because you don't want to believe something is true, does not mean it is not true. What did witnesses see? Who knows the truth? And what secrets have remained hidden for far too long? Hello and welcome back to the 23rd episode of Spooky and Kooky.
As always, if you're into anything paranormal, conspiracy, horror, a little bit spooky, a little bit kooky, this is the place for you.
And today we're back with another missing persons case. Like we said in the one about the Yuba County 5, we wanted to give the cases kind of the time they deserved to really go through them in detail. So we wanted to split it up so it wasn't too much for anyone. Mm-hmm. And today we're going to be talking about the case of Johnny Gosch. So I'll jump straight into the case because I don't want to waste any time because it's quite a long one. Mm-hmm. So we'll get right into it. Johnny Gosch was born on November 12, 1969 and disappeared aged 12 on September 5th, 1982. To this day, his case remains unsolved and many have theories on what could have happened to Johnny. And the theory that Johnny's mother, Noreen Gosch, believes is that Johnny was kidnapped into an underground child sex trafficking ring. And just trigger warning, before I forget, there's going to be talk about child sex abuse in this. So if that's not something that you want to hear about, look after yourselves and don't watch this episode. But a lot of people know about this case, so might already be prepared for it, but trigger warning. Noreen Gosch is a big part of the story and has been well known for being outspoken against the police and FBI and their poor handling of her son's case. And I think this is why the case stands out to many people and lead to conspiracies about a police cover-up. There are just some things that the police did that I don't know whether to call them incompetence or corruption, because there is so many shady moves by the police, which we'll obviously go over. And I think this is why so many people are so invested in this case, because something just seems off.
Yeah.
Noreen has been through a lot in her life, and before Johnny was born, she lived with her first husband and their 2 children. Her husband was sadly diagnosed with cancer, and 2 months before he lost his life, their house was hit by a tornado whilst they were inside it, and their house was completely destroyed. Noreen found her 2 children among the rubble and dug them out in a rainstorm. Unfortunately, they all survived the tornado, but due to her husband's passing, she had to rebuild by herself and her 2 children.
Wow.
Yeah, and do you know that saying that the same boiling water that softens a potato hardens an egg, so you're either a potato or an egg in life?
I have not heard that saying.
Noreen is like the eggiest egg ever.
She's a strong woman.
She is so strong.
Wow.
And you'll see as we go through, she just has no fear in her. And some people don't like her and doesn't like the way she handles things.
Is that because she's very matter of fact though? Like, do some people...
I think so. I don't know if people just don't like the way she talks or she is very outspoken, but some people criticise Noreen. I'm not going to be unbiased in this one. I think Noreen's badass. Yeah, she rebuilt their life, and Noreen later married John Gosch and lived in West Des Moines, Iowa, and had their son Johnny together. When Johnny would have been growing up in the 70s and early 80s, it was much more normalised for children to play outside without supervision, and generally people were a lot less aware of the dangers of kidnapping. Johnny would actually go on to be one of the first missing children to be printed on a milk carton.
Oh. Okay.
So you know the milk carton kids in America?
Mm-hmm.
He was one of the first. This was before the threat of your child going missing was at the front of parents' minds, and things like this were just not known to happen. Johnny was a local paper boy and took his job very seriously. He was saving up for a dirt bike, and in the 13 months he had the job, he had never missed a day and was always conscious to be on time. His father would accompany him on his early morning paper round and would escort Johnny around the neighbourhood as Johnny rode his bike, and he had a little red wagon attached to the bike where the papers sat.
Yeah.
In the months leading up to the disappearance, the family attended a football game, and John Gosch went to find Johnny as he had gone to get snacks, and they could no longer see him. He found Johnny under the bleachers talking to a police officer, which they found a little odd, of a police officer talking to a 12-year-old boy under the bleachers.
About what?
No one knows. Which is what's... Why did you need to do it? So why were either of them under the bleachers? They just found it odd. So John called Johnny over and he returned to his parents, and then as they were leaving the game, Johnny saw the police officer again and he told Noreen, "Oh, that was the man that I spoke to under the bleachers," and Johnny said, "I want to be a policeman one day." So still, no one knows what was said in that conversation. The family also had phone calls that started happening at strange times, late night or early morning in the months leading up to the disappearance, and usually these were explained to be the wrong number. The night before the disappearance, Johnny came downstairs and asked both his parents if he could go alone to his paper round the next morning. John seemed okay with this, but Noreen told Johnny that she didn't feel comfortable with him going alone. She would rather that he go with his dad. So Johnny told his parents that he loved them and went up to bed. At 1:30 a.m, the phone rang and John picked it up, and Noreen heard him say, "Yeah, okay, alright," to the person on the other line. John told Noreen it was the wrong number, and Noreen thought this was strange, as you don't have a conversation with someone if it's the wrong number. Surely it would be like, "Okay, bye."
Yeah.
So more was said than just the wrong number.
Although he pretty much did say it. Yeah, okay, alright. That's all he said. So you could be like, "Oh, sorry, wrong number."
Yeah, but I don't know if it was like he said, "Yeah, okay,
Oh, I see.
alright," or if it was, "Yeah, okay, alright, bye."
Yeah.
But also, surely it would be like, "Is this so-and-so?" And he'd say, "No, this is..."
Yeah, you wouldn't
Gosch
immediately... Or I guess you wouldn't recognise... Oh, I don't know.
Yeah, so...
Recognise the voice.
Yeah, Noreen felt this was a little bit odd, but
It is
she
weird.
shrugged it off and
Who's ringing at
went to
half
sleep.
one as well?
Exactly, and these calls had been happening for quite some time. But she shrugged it off and went to sleep.
The paper round thing. So was it after he answered the phone that he then said he wanted to do his paper round on
No,
his
it was
own?
before.
Okay. No, like, it rang that night as well, but not half one.
No, it rung that night at 1:30.
Oh, right.
This happened, but before that, he had come down and
He'd
asked
already... Yeah, okay.
anyway. Yeah, Noreen went to sleep, and the next morning Johnny did not wake up his father and instead headed out to do his paper route with his dog Gretchen, but otherwise alone. At 7:45 a.m, John received a phone call from a neighbour. All the neighbourhood knew Johnny, and the neighbour knew that Johnny was the boy who usually delivered his paper. He explained to John that he had not gotten his morning paper, and this immediately concerned Noreen, but John was more relaxed about it and thought maybe Johnny's overslept, or maybe he's got held up in his round, so he went up to his bedroom, but ultimately didn't find Johnny there. So he told Noreen, "Look, I'll go out and search the neighbourhood, I'll find him and we'll both come back and have breakfast."
Yeah.
When John went out to search the neighbourhood, Gretchen, their dog, had already returned home, and it's not known how she got home, but people think she just wandered back on her own accord, because dogs do that, don't
Yeah.
they? They know their way home sometimes, so they think that happened. John found Johnny's wagon with the papers in, but could not find Johnny, so he delivered the rest of the papers.
What?
Yeah, weird. I don't know why you would do that.
No, I'd be like, "Where is my child? Screw everyone getting their paper. Come and get it from the wagon yourself if you really want one."
Yeah, there's 3 babies on this wagon.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he delivered the rest of the papers and then returned home, and that's when they
Without-
called the police.
What? So his bike wasn't there. It was just the trailer.
The bike, the trailer, and the papers.
See, I could maybe understand if it was just the trailer, because you think, oh, he's just like binned it and thought, I'm going to go off on my bike. If the bike is also there,
but even that would be out of character. Cause
it would
Johnny
still be weird.
This
I still think that's
job
weird.
Seriously, yeah.
But I would be like,
oh,
maybe
yeah,
you're going to think that. But
I probably still wouldn't deliver the rest of the papers, though.
No.
I really wouldn't.
But I could maybe understand it, like 10% more.
I don't know what scenario would need to happen for me to deliver the rest of those papers.
And I'd be like, well, this is your fault. If you're fine, no, I didn't deliver your papers because that's your job and it's your fault you did that.
This is consequences to your actions. But I'm going to go home and call the police because at this point I don't know where my son is.
Yeah, I think I would just carry on looking.
Yeah, so the police took approximately an hour to get to the home to take a statement from John and Noreen. However, they were insistent that this was a runaway case and refused to declare Johnny as missing until 72 hours had gone by.
The first 72 hours are the most critical time.
72 hours is a long time.
Yeah, that's when you would find the most amount of stuff.
Because I think even if it was a runaway, you've got a 12-year-old boy for 72 hours unaccounted for and potentially in harm's way if harm's way hasn't already happened.
Yeah,
so
arguably,
surely...
even a 12-year-old boy probably can't look after themselves on their own for 24 hours.
Yeah.
Let alone 72.
Yeah, far too long. Johnny's parents argued to the police that Johnny had not run away and Johnny was responsible and would not just abandon his dog or his papers, but police argued that because the papers were still there, that this was a sign this was not a kidnapping.
Well, they're going to take the papers as well.
Everyone knows if you're going to kidnap someone, you're going to take their papers. I'm surprised the police weren't like, well, the kidnappers didn't deliver the rest of the papers, so...
If they're going to kidnap them, they would deliver the papers as well?
Yeah.
Come on.
That was their argument. But even, like, abandoning the dog is so weird.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I'm just going to take off and leave the family dog.
Yeah.
That would be so out of character. For most people, I think.
Yeah.
The police also refused to take a picture of him. Why? Literally, why?
Just put it in your pocket.
Even if you're going to get back to the police station
and just put it on your desk
with it, why would you refuse to take it?
Yeah.
It's just so bizarre.
So I'm not taking one without paper.
Yeah. So Noreen was like, I don't feel like you're really doing much or helping me, so I'm going to set off on my own investigation.
Yeah, fair.
And she started interviewing people in the neighbourhood and handed all her findings to the police. And there were several witnesses.
Oh.
Including other paper boys and some neighbours. They saw Johnny talking to a man in a car who appeared to be asking for directions. Johnny gave the man in the car directions and then returned to his friend Mike, who was another local paper boy, and was chatting with him. And then the car did a U-turn, came back to pull up next to both the boys and asked for more directions. Johnny saw a neighbour of his, John Rossi, coming out to collect his paper, so he probably was just getting annoyed with this man asking for so many directions. So went over to John Rossi and was like, can you go and deal with that man and give him directions? So Rossi went over to him. When Johnny returned to his friend Mike, they both remarked that the man was really weird in the car.
Yeah.
Rossi also later told newspapers he believed the man in the car was high, as his eyes were wide and he seemed very alert. Johnny was loading papers into his wagon when Rossi last saw him, and the guy in the car drove off appearing disgruntled, which, what are you angry about at this point? Because 3 people have tried to... You've asked for directions from 3 people, including Mike.
And you've literally just turned around.
Yeah. So he drove off disgruntled. Another witness claims they saw a man come out of the shadows between 2 houses and started following Johnny as the witness passed him in a car, which just sounds so creepy. A neighbour saw Johnny from their window and saw a silver Ford Fairmount pull up beside Johnny. The neighbour did not have a good view of the car and the driver due to the position of the window, and when he turned away he heard a door shut, and when he looked again Johnny was gone and the car was speeding off. This sighting occurred at approximately 6:06 a.m. The police did later conduct their own searches where they interviewed these witnesses and searched a local forest, but they seemed to be looking with the narrative that this was a runaway that was hiding from his parents and not a kidnapping, so their search tactics were not appropriate for what they were doing. Even
After
with these
all
witnesses,
that,
they've got the make and colour of the car,
what?
and they still were like, this is a runaway.
Did he run away into the van? Like,
Yeah, without his
What?
papers. So they're like, he must have gone on his own free will. I don't know.
I would think he was kidnapped if it wasn't for the papers.
Yeah, that's
He's just run
the
away.
only thing. News about Johnny's disappearance spread around the neighbourhood, and as usual in missing persons cases, the community all came together to also do volunteer searches, which I think is a really normal thing. Like, I
Yeah.
see that in all
Yeah.
missing persons cases, that volunteers come to do their own searches.
Mm-hmm.
But police put a stop to this, to any amateur search taking place.
On what grounds?
Why? Because surely it's just helping you.
And if you don't think it's foul play,
Why?
there's nothing to contaminate, so why would you not want
Yeah.
as many people as possible?
And at this point, it's about saving life, so it wouldn't be.
Yeah, it doesn't. That doesn't make
The
any
contamination
sense.
risk would be outweighed by that, so it doesn't make any sense. So they put a stop to any searches, and actually one day when a search was due to be conducted by volunteers from the community, Chief Police Orvin Cooney arrived at the search and stood up on a picnic table through a megaphone and said, "All you folks go home, this kid ain't nothing but a damn runaway," and shut the whole thing down.
This kid doesn't even have a history of running away. Why would you be so certain of that?
But what are they hurting by just looking for him?
I don't
It doesn't make
understand.
any sense why the police are so like,
Hell-bent
no,
on
this
it.
isn't happening on my watch.
Yeah.
The volunteers reported that it was clear that Cooney had been drinking heavily this day, and Cooney was known to be an alcoholic.
The police guy.
Yeah, and he was later dismissed, but nothing relating to the Johnny Gosch case. He was dismissed for something else.
Just probably being drunk on the job.
Yeah. So he had been drinking that day when he showed up, according to witnesses. But the volunteers thought that John and Noreen must have sent Chief Cooney to disperse the event, because it must have been so odd that they were like, it must be something to do with John and Noreen. So they went to Noreen's house to be like,
Why?
why? And Noreen was really shocked about it because it was the first time she heard about it. She didn't know that the police had done that. After this, she tried to get the help of the FBI involved and just make them overwrite the local police because
Yeah.
the local police were acting this way. But the FBI were like, oh, slight problem, a lot of red tape in that. We can't actually get involved if the local police don't want our help, and they're saying they've got it covered. They're saying they're not struggling, they're fine. So we're not going to get involved at this time. Noreen, probably shocked and confused as to why the police seemed to be working against them, started talking to news outlets to try and push for more exposure of the case and to highlight police incompetence or corruption.
Yeah.
So when she would appear in the media, lots of leads would come in to her and she would document them all and take these to the police, and the police did nothing. They said they were not going to look into any of these leads as they were irrelevant. Not really relevant, is it? Any of them. I'm not even going to look at them because they're just not relevant.
I don't want his picture, and I'm not going to listen to anything you say.
No. After all the information Noreen had received, she was convinced that Johnny had been kidnapped. The police said the case had gone cold and there was in fact no evidence or motive to suggest this was a kidnapping. But they've not even looked into the leads.
No, they're
So
like,
that's
well,
quite a
it's
bold
all
claim.
redundant.
Yeah.
What about... Sorry, is there any news on Johnny? And they're like, what?
Who's that?
Who's that?
Oh, that's irrelevant, sorry.
Oh, the runaway?
Yeah.
No.
I only know him as the runaway. Noreen also told police about the strange encounter with the policeman under the bleachers and the strange phone calls that occurred prior to the disappearance that had since stopped. So there had been no more phone calls since he disappeared. But these 2 bits of information were also dismissed.
Of course.
Noreen and John were also blocked from putting up a missing persons poster up in City Hall because the police were like, we don't want this distressing anyone that's going to come into City Hall. No words, because why?
Well, I don't understand.
And this happens all the time. Like in missing persons cases, people put up missing person posters, but in this case, they're like,
no.
it's going to distress people.
I don't get it.
That matters more than the safety of this child. I can't have Bill from down the road getting upset about this.
And they're already trying to search for him anyway. They're already distressed. What are you talking about?
They already know about it.
Yeah, what the hell?
But yeah, I think there was like a fair that was due to happen in City Hall.
Oh, I don't want to ruin
that. So they didn't want to ruin that. Yeah, don't put a downer on this day. From all of this, Noreen was becoming suspicious about the police's handling of this case, which obviously...
Yeah.
Starting to suspect that they were somehow involved in his disappearance and subsequently were actively trying to cover this up. So again... she did a news appearance. She spoke to Johnny in this news appearance, appealing to him if he's out there, and to spread awareness to other parents to prevent other children from going missing.
Yeah.
Noreen also addressed the police and questioned why they were not properly investigating. And I think in this news appearance, she also mentioned another missing persons case of 2 young girls that went missing after Johnny, I think.
Right.
And both were a similar age from the Des Moines area and they were trafficked to Omaha, Nebraska. And Noreen questioned why police were not looking into this as it could relate to Johnny's case. And the police did not like being questioned in the media like this. Because...
no, because it makes them look bad. But equally, if they were doing something shady, why not just take the kid's picture and let her post it? Like, you're making it...
What are you scared of happening? Because
it's going to make no difference. If you're some part of this big conspiracy, what's taking a picture and letting a missing person's poster...
It's actually probably going to diffuse suspicions a lot more.
Literally, like, you're making it worse for yourself.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. But on that note, what Chief Police Cooney does after this media event is just so much worse.
Did he get his little megaphone out again?
He might have well
Everyone
shut up. So he came to the Gosch house after this appearance and screamed at Noreen for doing this. And Noreen responded, "There is no need to scream and yell. I have perfect hearing." This is what I mean, she's such a badass.
Get it, girl.
Yeah. Apparently he turned purple as well. Like, he just continued and turned
I can
purple.
See a picture of him in my mind.
I don't even know what he looks like, but I can see it.
Yeah, I can just see
Veiny
him with the worst blood pressure ever as well.
With all that drink.
Yeah.
And actually, following the media appearance, Noreen started receiving anonymous death threats, which 3 guesses who that's going to be. It's probably Cooney. Like, if it's not, it's his associates at this point, because this man just knows something.
I feel like he'd rather scream his death threats.
Yeah, he doesn't need to make them anonymous. The anonymous death threats basically were calling Noreen's house and saying that if you keep making waves, you're dead. So following this, Noreen was at work, minding her own business, and she was visited by a pair of investigators from the local police department. And they said to her, "We've got a suggestion that might help you. Have another baby, and that will keep you busy, and you can move on from Johnny." They didn't realise her boss was in an office round the corner, overheard this conversation and came and told them to immediately get off the premises.
The fact they went out of their way to do that as well, to say that. To go to her work and be like, just have another baby.
What did they think that was going to help as well? Because someone like Noreen, it doesn't look like she's taking this lying down.
I don't think anyone would be like,
okay,
thank
I've
you.
not thought of that.
You know what? I'm not going to do anything else. I'm done. I'm over it.
Johnny who?
Just have another one.
So, if this wasn't bad enough, The FBI then got involved in this
now
slander
they
on
can
Noreen
get involved.
and called her a loon.
What?
Yeah.
And it's interesting because, I mean, you get, when you're out in the media, you're going to get crazy people do send you death threats, whatever. But it's interesting what it said, like, stop making waves.
Yeah.
So it's not about, like, you're the reason your son's, like, you know, stuff like that.
Yeah.
No, that's about that's defamation, like her defamation about the police. That's nothing to do with her child being missing or blaming her or anything like that. That just makes it so much more sketch.
There's actually an interview with Noreen saying this is a message to all the parents in America that if you try and find your missing kid, the FBI is going to call you a loon. That's not word for word, that's just what
generally
what I can recall, but it was quite a harrowing media appearance, just thinking like, why did you think this was going to help?
And that just really adds fuel to a conspiracy fire. Like, why would the FBI get involved for their one comment to be like, loon?
It just doesn't make any sense.
No.
So trust was completely broken from the police due to all of their actions. So John and Noreen decided that they were going to get help from a private investigator to find Johnny. So they had to hire this private investigator and also had to hire their own sketch artist to put out a sketch of the man seen talking to him that morning. So they had to fund all of this. So they actually sold 15,000 candy bars with Johnny's face and details on to fund this, because the police were just like, you're not getting an ounce of our resources.
You're just crazy.
Yeah, you were just a loon. We literally couldn't give a fuck. One private investigator actually followed a lead to Dallas, Texas, and attended a child auction, which is so disturbing that happens, hoping to find Johnny amongst the children, but this was unsuccessful, and sadly he didn't see Johnny amongst those children.
The fact that he could just so easily
just swan in.
Yeah. And undercut and find one.
I know. I think they've got people from the inside, but then it's like, that must really weigh on your conscience, because do you shut it down after you've gone, or do you just need to sit back and let it happen?
Well, it's that classic thing, isn't it? Like, do you go for the small players, or do you play the long game? But then you know that there's going to be children that are suffering.
And we're attending one.
Yeah.
And that would traumatise you so much to see that. Like, I don't know how I feel about that. Noreen still fighting for answers about her son and also advocating for other missing and exploited children took on the police and FBI yet again and testified to the US Department of Justice. She named everyone in the case who she believed had failed her son and said that if the FBI is unable to help find missing children, then a portion of their budget should be reallocated to an organisation that will, which I think is fair enough.
Yeah.
So the DOJ allocated $10 million for the establishment of the National Centre for Missing and Exploited Children. So Noreen did that.
Aw. At least they listened to her.
But yeah, can you imagine if they were like, loon?
Oh my gosh, you're crazy. She really is, you're right.
Yeah, so they actually listened to her, and she was making those waves.
Yeah.
She heard those threats and she was like, you hate to see me coming because I'm not
Watch
stopping.
me.
Yeah, I literally don't care. During this time, leads were coming in and there was a potential sighting of Johnny in Tulsa, Oklahoma. A lady stated that she was out shopping and a young boy came running up to her in distress and told her to help him. He said he was Johnny Gosch. However, two men came up behind him, forced his arm behind his back and twisted it, so it hurt, and then led him away. The lady called local police in Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Yeah.
So this is far away from Des Moines, Iowa. So you would think they would have, their local police might be
They
left
don't
it.
communicate. They at that time they didn't really communicate across counties.
Not really, but when you hear their response, you think, okay, the whole of the US police departments are communicating solely about this kid to make it go away, because the police told this lady that this child she had seen was most likely just mad at his parents and just saying he was Johnny Gosch.
That is specialist. Out of all the responses, that is That is elite.
So she came away from that thinking, okay, but
why would a child do that?
Yeah, and why is it two men coming and going under duress?
Yeah.
Why wouldn't the two men come up and be like, we're his parents?
Yeah, be like, sorry about this.
Yeah, like, I'm so... Just ignore him. He didn't get a hot dog or something.
Yeah.
And he's just throwing a fit. Whatever. The police never followed it up, and she went home still thinking it was odd. She had not heard about the Johnny Gosch case. She had not seen a picture of him until later after that incident where she saw a TV report about it. She saw a picture of him and she was like, that is the guy that I saw. That is the boy. She went back to the police and she was insisting, I've seen Johnny Gosch.
Yeah.
He was the boy that day. Please do something. And this time his parents were actually notified of this, but the police still didn't follow it up. They were just saying, yeah, we'll tell the parents, but we're not doing anything about it. The parents passed the sighting on to their private investigators who did follow this up, and they confirmed that this was a legitimate sighting.
Wow.
So I don't know if they talked to the woman, I don't know
Maybe
what they did.
Maybe they saw it on CCTV.
Yeah, they confirmed it was Johnny. So if the local police department in Tulsa had followed it up sooner, maybe something could have happened.
Surely that in itself is enough for a lawsuit or like something.
Yeah. Then a shady character comes into the picture called Sam Sota. He contacted the Gosch family and said he wanted to help them with their case and that he was a private investigator.
Right.
So Noreen went to see him without the police because she's not working with them because
what are they going to
do? But she did have her guard up because of everything. So she actually recorded the meeting with Sam Sota.
Smart.
Yeah, she's not letting a thing get past her.
Mm-hmm.
She went to the meeting and thought the meeting was quite odd because Sam Sota told Noreen he had information from an informant that another abduction was being planned for another paperboy in Des Moines. Noreen found this odd because if he knew this information, why had he not gone to the police to try and stop this from occurring? Noreen took the recording of the meeting to the police and the media this time joined the police and declined to even listen to the tape and dismissed Noreen yet again. So the police did nothing. And then unfortunately, it appears Sam Sota's information was correct as another young paperboy called Eugene Martin, aged 13, went missing from the Des Moines area in August 1984. Eugene's disappearance had similarities to Johnny. Eugene was on his early morning paper round when witnesses saw him talking to a man, possibly asking him for directions. Eugene went missing and left his stack of papers just like Johnny. Unlike Johnny's case, the police did seem to take this more seriously and allowed local community searches and even offered a reward for information about the disappearance, which I don't know if it's the fact that these two aren't connected, which I don't think is true. I think they're definitely connected.
Maybe
but I think the police learn from last time, maybe doing nothing is worse than making it look like we're doing something. Yeah. And what's the point? Like, the local searchers aren't going to harm anyone because that boy's long gone.
They know where he is.
We know where he is. So
yeah,
I think that's more the case than it just not being connected.
What I don't understand though, why would that PI guy? What was he gaining from telling her there's another thing planned? I don't understand. What's that about?
So we'll go back to him later.
Yeah, because I don't what?
I don't understand why he told her that, but I don't know if he was trying to get extra information about the case or what Noreen had found out so far by meeting with her.
Giving her information and hoping she might give it in return.
Or I don't know if he's just sick and wanted to inflict some emotional...
involve himself in the case, like people do.
Yeah. Anyway, Eugene's parents did actually criticise the police, but not in the same way the Gosch family did, because obviously they did do more for Eugene. They just kind of said the local police departments are not set up to deal with kidnappings. The answers to this crime is sitting on some police man's desk and it's not even been looked at. Like, they just criticise the police in the fact that they're not really set up for it. So during this time, the Gosch family and others in the neighbourhood received a poster which shows similarities between the sketch made of the man speaking to Johnny in the blue Ford Fairmount, which is the one that the Gosches had to pay for themselves, and the private investigator Sam Soter.
Oh, so they looked the same?
Yeah.
Okay.
So the police began watching Sam Soter as he had predicted the kidnapping of Eugene and had intel on other sex trafficking crimes. But Sam believed that the man responsible for both the kidnappings was a man who worked for the Des Moines Register, which I think was the name of the paper, because he had molested at least 14 of the paper boys.
What?
His name was Frank Sikora, and when Sam went public with these allegations, Frank Sikora was fired. Sam argued he was in a position that he would know all the paper boys and their routes, so would be in a position to know the best time to kidnap them, which he does seem like quite a good candidate, but, you know, after he might have just been trying to throw the smoke elsewhere.
How can you explain away the fact that you look like
exactly
the sketch?
Yeah, so I don't know if he like saw that sort of gaining legs and gaining traction and was like, quick everyone, look over there.
Or potentially they might have even been working together and he just
exactly.
was like, I'm just going to throw you under the bus.
I'm only here for me and me only.
Yeah.
So Sam Soter left town, which was probably the right thing to do.
Yeah.
And Noreen went to the media and alluded that police were looking into Sam Soter, but she didn't use his name. She just heavily implied who they were looking into. She also said police were looking into 3 local men from Des Moines and a paedophile from Houston. Sam Soter did return to town after some time, but police did not have enough to charge him or do anything with their suspicions, probably because they just couldn't be bothered to look
just a
hard
bit
enough.
Late as well.
Yeah.
He just comes back with a mustache as well. It's not me.
Noreen and John started getting distressing phone calls which were threatening them to stop what they were doing before they got themselves hurt. During one of these phone calls, they heard a loud crash at their window, and when they looked out, a man was throwing rocks at their house, which, again, why?
Yeah, you're just making it seem like they're on the right track.
Yeah, like, my kid's gone missing, why are you throwing rocks at my house? When there's no implication that are involved, obviously, because if it's heavily pointing to the fact John and Noreen were involved, I'd be like, okay.
Then you get people like that, but this is not
I
about
wouldn't do
that.
it, I just want to make that clear. That was weird, but then they also got another phone call. This man said that he had taken Johnny and was holding him for $10,000 ransom. He gave them instructions to drop money off, and the Gosches worked with the police, which I don't know why they trusted the police.
Yeah.
However, police were not organised for the time of the drop-off, so that all went to pot. And the man rang back and said they were too late and they would now never get their son back. I don't think that's a genuine thing, because $10,000 is absolutely ridiculous. Like, if you've got a child...
Well, back then, I don't know.
I would still think it would be more.
But equally, that was so long afterwards as well. Like, if that was your...
Yeah.
If that's what you wanted, you would have been doing that, like, day 1, day 2.
And if money was your motive, I think you would try at least, like, 3 or 4 times to get the money. I don't think you would try once and just be like, well...
Oh, well. Yeah, you would just up it or something.
Yeah. I personally think even back then, you would ask for more just to chance it, because you've got their child. You've literally got all the leverage.
Yeah, it's just too late, surely. Like, that just doesn't make any sense.
So it could have just been a hoaxer. But
that's like a red herring, isn't it?
Yeah.
Or something. Yeah, or someone just BSing.
So another lead came in 1985 from a lady in Sioux City, Iowa, after shopping at a local store. She received a $1 bill in her change, and she noticed on the bill written in ink was a message. The message said, "I am alive," and was signed Johnny Gosch in his signature. The woman took this information to the police and also called the Gosch family. So the Gosch family asked her to send them the $1, and they would send her $1 in return, which I just thought, do you really need to send them $1 in return? I can't imagine the lady would be like, nah.
Well, maybe they just
did it as maybe they just get it as goodwill. I don't know.
Yeah,
I just found that weird.
So.
I would just be like, just have
it's
it.
Fine.
Like, don't send me $1 back. You can have it. I literally don't care.
Keep the change.
So The dollar was then looked at by Noreen and John, and they said the signature was Johnny's, and handwriting experts looked at this and confirmed this is Johnny's signature.
Were they fingerprinting at the time? Like, could they have not dusted that?
I don't know, because it was 1986, so I don't know. No, it was 1985, sorry. The bill had been in circulation since 1974, which was obviously before Johnny even went missing, so it couldn't give the police a timeline, because if it was, say, in circulation from 1984, they could be like, oh, he was still alive a year ago.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, they didn't know when he wrote it, and it couldn't give them a timeline. In 1986, Des Moines experienced yet another missing child case of Mark Allen, who was a 13-year-old boy who was walking to his friend's house just down the street. Unfortunately, there was no witnesses, and the last person to see him was his mother, as he walked away and told her to save him some pizza for when he got home. So no witnesses saw anything that happened to Mark. Mark did not return home, so his mother Nancy called the police, but again was met with resistance to take this seriously. They did not declare her son missing for 48 hours, and they also refused to acknowledge any similarity or possible connection of Mark, Eugene and Johnny's cases. They were like, no, there's no connection. But even the fact that they all live in Des Moines area, they're all boys and they're all 13. 2 of them are 13 and 1 of them 12.
Yep.
And 2 of them were paper boys.
They're all the circumstances, like, they're all outside walking on the street.
But police were like, no. On Valentine's Day 1988, Noreen checked her mailbox and almost fainted on the front lawn. She received a typed note she believes is from Johnny. It was postmarked Idaho, and due to it being typed, it was more difficult to ascertain whether this was Johnny or not. Part of the letter read, I will never be permitted to return home. They've cut and dyed my hair. And at the end, it said, love your son, Johnny Gosch. And the reason why Noreen thinks it's from Johnny is because apparently Johnny would always sign off his birthday cards, love your son, Johnny Gosch. And they sort of teased him about it because they were like, you don't need to write your son, Johnny Gosch. You can just write love Johnny. But he kept on doing that until...
That just seems a bit like, because everything else has been opportune.
Yeah.
Like, you'd be able to sneak writing on a dollar or whatever and get away to speak to a lady, but typing a note and posting it? I don't know how you would...
How old would he have been at this time as well? So
how would you have the means to do that?
Yeah, that's...
without them knowing.
Yeah, that's another thing I thought.
Yeah, or like, did they think if he did that, they would give up and then he's not as hot to handle for them? Like, did they let him send it?
I don't know. And if you're sold into sex trafficking, I guess you're being passed around, and maybe some people are better to you than others.
I don't
Maybe
know.
You've got access to some things.
Yeah.
I don't... Obviously, this is such a horrible, horrific world.
Yeah.
And we don't know anything about it, really. It's so underground that you just don't know. So
that one is harder to
on
believe.
the outside, I don't know if I believe it, but Noreen believes it, and it's because of that love your son Johnny Gosch, because that was his kind of thing. In 1989, so a year later, another lead in the case came forward, and this is where it gets so frustrating. If it wasn't already, it gets worse.
God.
So, a man came forward called Paul Bonossi, and Paul Bonossi was 21 and was serving a sentence for sexual assault on a child. Bonossi has dissociative identity disorder, which is formerly known as multiple personality disorder, and it's a mental health condition which is characterised by someone having 2 or more distinct personalities that are used interchangeably.
Yeah.
Their behaviour changes when their personalities switch, and they can also experience gaps in memories when in different personality states. Bonossi could only recall certain details of his story when in different personalities. Whilst in custody, Bonossi told his lawyer John DeCamp disturbing details that he had been sold into child prostitution at an early age as part of an organised human sex trafficking cartel, and alleged that this ring was led by prominent businessman Lawrence King. King was a rising member of the Republican Party and was a director at Franklin County Credit Union in Omaha, Nebraska. In 1988, the National Credit Union Administration raided and shut down Franklin after finding evidence that tens of millions of dollars had gone missing and suspected King of running a huge embezzlement scheme. He denied these claims, however, when the FBI got involved, him and several associates were indicted for embezzling approx $39 million from Franklin accounts, and as he was facing overwhelming evidence, he decided to plead guilty. He thought, oh no, it's not worth it anymore. They've got me red-handed.
And it won't go to trial, so I guess, that changes.
So he received a sentence of 15 years for fraud, and as this was all unfolding, and after rumours started to swell that the money taken was to fund a child sex trafficking ring, many people felt that there was too many prominent people involved, including politicians, businessmen, and police departments that were all involved in this underground sex trafficking ring. So other witnesses came forward and corroborated Bonossi's claims, which you can find his interviews online, but they are quite long and distressing. You can find the transcripts of them, and what happened to these children are just so distressing that I'm not going to go into, because I read it and it just made me feel sick. But they are online if anyone's interested in learning about it. In 1989, a investigative panel was established to examine both the financial failings and the child abuse allegations that were surrounding King, and they hired private investigator Gary Caradori. Some allegations that were found out during the investigation revealed more disturbing details of ritual satanic abuse, drug trafficking, and CIA-linked arms deals. Caradori went on a trip with his 8-year-old son to collect evidence, and when returning home, their plane mysteriously broke apart above Illinois, and they both sadly died in the crash. Caradori's briefcase, which was allegedly full of evidence, including pictures that would implicate King, was never found at the crash site. Due to this event, witnesses who had come forward got scared for their safety, and many withdrew their testimony, and the witnesses who did want to go ahead and testify were reminded that they could be charged with perjury if they were found to be lying on the stand. So they were kind of intimidated out of it, but some people still did go forward and testify. They were also receiving threats, like the Gosches were, and when this all went to trial, it was concluded that claims about child sex trafficking ring were unfounded, and one witness called Alicia, who did come forward, was actually sentenced after the trial with perjury and ended up with a 9 to 15 year sentence. So she got as much as King. What? Yeah, and Paul Bonossi was also indicted for perjury, but his charges were dropped as he was already serving time for the child sex abuse anyway. Remember what I said when Noreen was screamed at by the police chief after going to the media about the 2 girls' disappearance that was similar to Johnny? Noreen believes that Chief Cooney reacted this way as she was trying to bring to public attention part of the child sex ring, because the 2 girls were trafficked to Omaha, Nebraska, and that's where King had his financial issues. So it could have possibly been connected. John DeCamp, the lawyer for Bonossi, went on to write a book about this, which I really want to read, and criticised official investigations and alleged this was a political cover-up that had hidden the truth of King's crimes and the others involved. Paul went on to file a lawsuit against King, who didn't respond, so the court awarded Paul $1 million in damages by February 27th, 1999, but it was never paid out. Which I don't know, if the court tells you that you need to pay it, then it should be enforced, but it was never paid out, so King pretty much got away with a 15-year sentence, which Alicia's doing 9 to 15 years.
For just speaking out.
Yeah, which seems so broken, like...
Yeah, that does not correlate.
How is all of that King business related to Johnny Gosch? I didn't just go off on a tangent. It is related. Because Paul Bonossi spoke at length with a psychiatrist that was taped about the crimes of the child sex trafficking ring, and when his lawyer John DeCamp listened to the tapes, he heard Paul speak about an incident involving a paperboy from Iowa. DeCamp then cross-referenced the dates and area Paul was speaking about and was stunned that it matched the case of Johnny Gosch. He reached out to the Gosch house and John answered the phone. DeCamp explained that his client may have information that could help them find their son, and John decided not to tell Noreen about it.
But did he pursue it on his own?
Yeah, but...
He just didn't tell Noreen about it. Maybe he thought that she was just so consumed.
She doesn't seem like someone that can't handle this.
Yeah,
but
true.
He pursued it. He wanted to see if it was legitimate. So he actually went to the prison to meet Paul, where he was serving time.
Yeah.
And meet also John DeCamp. He actually went to this meeting with another lady who he told was Noreen. Like, he told people that this lady who went with him was Noreen.
That's weird. What the hell?
Yeah, it's really weird. He also hired private investigator Roy Stevens to look into the claims for them. So Roy spent hours interviewing Paul, who gave a wealth of details relating to Johnny's disappearance. Paul said that the night before he was taken to a hotel in Des Moines with a man called Emilio. A man came to visit their room and showed them a picture of Johnny Gosch and told them that this was the boy they were going to take. Paul said that they enjoyed taking children from close families to inflict the most emotional pain, as in the adults, not Paul. He didn't enjoy it. He's very traumatised by this.
To do it.
He was forced to do it, but the adults liked taking boys from close families to inflict the most emotional pain. But a lot of the people were also called children of the state, which I think is people in foster care or in children's homes. I'm not too sure, but I think that's what that means.
Yeah.
So the next morning they woke up early and Emilio drove them both in his Ford Fairmount to Johnny's neighbourhood. Paul was in the back seat, and once Johnny was pulled in the car, Paul was instructed to hold him down, and he used chloroform on Johnny to keep him quiet. Trigger warning for this next bit. Emilio then threatened Paul at gunpoint to molest Johnny whilst he filmed them. He was then transferred into another van driven by two men who stopped for a drink before going to Sioux City, which is where the dollar bill came from.
So it's all adding up.
All adding up.
Love how they stopped for a drink as well.
I know.
Just all this kidnapping is thirsty work.
At least we didn't deliver those papers. That would have really taken it out of us. When they got to Sioux City, they were locked in a windowless room in a farmhouse for a week or more before being taken on to Colorado. Roy thought all of this information would be important for the FBI to look at, as he felt his claims were genuine, but the FBI did not even come and speak to Bonossi. They said they did not trust his claims, most likely due to his mental health condition, and they felt it was all an elaborate hoax. Roy called the Gosch residence and got Noreen on the phone, who was confused as to why she didn't know about Bonossi and was shocked her husband had kept this from her. So in March 1991, Noreen went to see Bonossi, who was immediately overtaken by guilt when he saw Noreen, and you can actually watch this. I think it's available on YouTube. Obviously Bonossi is in prison for the crimes that he did, but considering the life he had, he's obviously a very messed up guy. He's very traumatized, but he shows a lot of remorse and trauma in these interviews. And Noreen said at first, I wanted to strangle him, but I thought I need to know what he's got to say. And also he is a victim as well, so it's
and I wonder why the husband didn't tell her in the first place. Because she goes so hard. Was he like,
maybe
I want to make sure, and I want to make sure if it's true that we get everything we can before like going
maybe he
off.
didn't want to get our hopes up.
But I don't get having fake Noreen with you.
No, surely it would just be better to just go on your own, because then it's like, what happens because if you're checking that the claim's legitimate, then you would take real Noreen when the
just
claim's
go on your
legitimate.
own.
Because the people are going to be like, why did you say that was Noreen? Like, it doesn't make any sense. Yeah, that bit is just weird.
That is so weird.
Noreen went to see Bonossi, who was immediately overtaken by guilt when he saw Noreen and learnt who she was. He confirmed details to her that showed her that he knew her son. He told her details of Johnny having a scar on his tongue and lower leg from a burn. He told her that he knew she was a yoga instructor and used to take Johnny to work, and knew that Johnny would have a stutter when nervous. These details had never been made public, so again they argued to the FBI to please look into Paul Bonossi's claims. But the FBI were again reluctant and still remained firm that this was a hoax, as Johnny could not have been taken to Colorado.
Do you know what I find really harrowing about that? Is the, like, scar on the tongue thing.
Yeah, because why would you even notice that about someone?
That is really,
Unless it was really prominent. I didn't even know what that would look like.
But...
yeah, it's just weird, isn't it? But why did they not... They don't ever explain why they think what there is. Because they're just like, well, he wouldn't have been taken to Colorado.
Like, that's the issue they have with this entire story.
I don't understand it. It's like, we all know sex trafficking doesn't happen in Colorado.
It's just the weirdest details. Like, well, they wouldn't leave the papers.
Yeah.
Well, they wouldn't go to Colorado. Like, what are you saying?
And if they say they've got no information and no leads and no inkling what happened, why do they think they're so firm on knowing what didn't happen?
Yeah.
Like, oh, well, no, it couldn't be that. It's like, but you said you had nothing, so why do you not think it's that?
That's so weird.
It's so weird. Noreen had taken pictures of 12 men to show Paul and asked if he knew any of them were involved in Johnny's kidnapping, and he recognised the picture of private investigator Sam Sota, claiming that he was the man who came to the hotel room the night prior and the driver of the van. The other man with him was a guy he knew as Tony. Paul also recalled details of an incident where himself, Johnny and another boy had been taken to a restaurant where they were painting their nails in the bathroom, where Johnny wrote on the wall, "Johnny Gosch was here." He was able to describe the restaurant in detail. He was also part of an episode of America's Most Wanted that focused on Johnny's case. Paul took them to the house where they had been held in Colorado. Apparently they had never been there, according to the FBI.
Of course.
And had extremely emotional reaction when he saw the house because of the trauma, and clearly knew about the house's layout because he was able to lead the investigators down to an area that was dug out where they would put the children if the police ever came to the home, and they even found initials carved into the wood down in this hole. Yeah, so disturbing, but again, this just shows how backed up he is with his claims.
How old was he?
He was 21 when he was in prison and came out with all of this. Paul's testimony has all been corroborated, and Paul did receive letters about other victims who knew of Johnny and confirmed the characters that Paul had spoke about, so Emilio, Tony and Sam Sota. He was able to give details none of the public knew, draw pictures, marked an X on a map where the abduction took place, give first and last names of people involved. Like, he gave so much, and he spoke about the fact that they took pictures of Johnny the day before, which was witnessed and reported to police. So someone saw someone taking pictures of Johnny and went to police and was like, it was just a bit weird, like, think you should know. And police were like, it was not a crime to take a picture.
Oh my god.
So please dismiss that. And Paul was actually also able to say how much Johnny was sold for, and said Johnny was picked as they liked his look. Paul was also asked in court how they could abduct Johnny if his dad was always with him on his paper round, and Paul replied, prior engagements were made to ensure Johnny went alone, which then sparked rumours of John's knowledge and involvement about his son's kidnapping, as he answered the call the night before and didn't wake up with him. And when Johnny asked them to both go alone, John thought this was okay, but it was Noreen that said no. Even with all this evidence that Bonossi gave, his claims were never taken seriously or followed up on. It was always viewed as an elaborate hoax, which, even if the FBI and police think that, just go and have a conversation with him.
At some point, there's so much evidence, you surely can't ignore it all.
It's like they say something, and no matter what happens, they're like, we can't go back on it. We can't embarrass ourselves like this. We can't go back and say, maybe it's not a hoax.
That surely can't just be incompetent. There is way too much for that just to be incompetence.
It's so bizarre, but they never even went to speak to him. Like, just go and have a conversation with this man.
And what do you think about the John thing? Do you think he knew?
I think it's possible, because maybe he was involved in some child abuse stuff and people threatened him. Or, suspicious man under the bleachers, that conversation was about grooming, and maybe Johnny was having conversations with people that no one knew about, saying try and go alone and we'll take you to have a better life. You don't know, because he also took his dog out, which I think is strange if he knew he was going to...
I don't think he knew that he was going to be abducted.
No.
But if a police officer told him, something to do, he would probably do it because...
Yeah, you're taught to obey adults, especially police.
Yeah.
So maybe...
I don't know about the dad, because it's very possible, and his behaviour is weird. Yeah. But also you could say that, I guess, as a generalisation, like, dads seem to be less worried about their son than,
because even like, mother would be. The papers, like, was he given the kidnappers time to get away?
Well, exactly that. Like, but... And that's the thing, like, you don't know whether he was just like, oh, he's old enough now, like, we've done the paper round enough times that it's fine. Yeah. And genuinely thought his neighbourhood was safe enough that it was easily explainable. He got distracted, went to
Looking back on it with hindsight, he's probably like, oh, shouldn't have done that. But at the time, you don't know what's happened has happened.
Yeah, it's hard, because it could easily be either thing. He
and
could
the sign
easily
of the
know
times.
Or not.
Today, very weird.
Yeah.
Back then, not so weird. But
it's hard.
The fact that Paul said prior arrangements has been made, it just takes you back to that phone call.
Well, multiple phone calls.
If it was like, okay, alright, someone on the other line could have been saying, tomorrow's the day. Yeah. Don't go with Johnny.
Alright.
Got it? Yeah.
Yeah.
And also, surely police could do something with those phone records still.
You would think they would be, you'd be able to see what number rang.
Yeah. But they just were like, nah, that's irrelevant.
They're like, why check the phone calls when he rang?
There's no point, just get another child.
We're doing too much here.
We've got other fish to fry. So, John and Noreen Gosch actually divorced in 1993 and both have since remarried. I'm not sure why they got divorced, if it was something to do with their differing opinions on the case.
I mean, you can see that coming, Yeah. With him hiding stuff and like...
Or they just might have grown apart. Maybe she was a lady that he took. He was like, you're going to be my wife anyway, so I'll just say it's Noreen.
Oh my god. Yeah. Noreen number 2.
So they divorced in 1993, and in March 1997, Noreen is woken up at 2:30 a.m. by a knock on her apartment door. Waiting outside was a 27-year-old man claiming to be Johnny Gosch, accompanied by another unidentified man. She asked who was there, and Johnny said, "It's me, Mum, Johnny." Noreen said she immediately recognised her son and that the eyes never change. But Johnny also opened up his shirt to reveal a birthmark on his chest. His hair was straight and dyed jet black and came all the way down to his shoulders. He had a coat over a t-shirt and jeans. They spoke for almost 2 hours, and Johnny had said he had seen an interview where Noreen said that she hoped that he would contact her and he could always reach out. Johnny confirmed everything to Noreen that Bonossi had told her, and said he was kidnapped into an underground sex trafficking organisation, and when he was too old they chucked him out onto the streets with nowhere to go, and in constant fear they would return and kill him, so he was forced to live under a fake identity as it was too dangerous for him and his parents to just come home. So Noreen had kept this meeting private. She had said Johnny asked her to never tell anyone, so she didn't, as it could affect Noreen's safety and could affect Johnny's safety. But she was in court testifying about something to do with Johnny's case. And under oath, she had been asked if, since Johnny's kidnapping, if she had ever seen Johnny again. She said she could not lie under oath and presented this story to the court. This created mixed opinions, some thinking Noreen is making this up, including her ex-husband John, who said that he is not convinced that this happened. Noreen has explained her son asked her not to speak about it, and if she did, could put him in more danger, so she didn't. Maybe she thought by the time that she was in court, he's long enough gone.
Maybe she just didn't anticipate they would ask her that.
Yeah, because it's such a random thing to ask. Like, no.
And it makes you think, is that because whoever was involved in asking the questions was involved in what happened to him and wanted to make sure that he hadn't gone to his mum.
Yeah.
So asked the question and then
That's
was like,
a good point, actually.
well, now we know that he has gone back to her.
Yeah. I never thought about that, actually. I thought if Noreen is making it up, it would kind of make sense because she wants people to look into the disappearance.
She wants to keep it fresh.
So she wants people to look into it. So she's like, Johnny himself told me everything's Paul's saying, so go look into what Paul's saying, because we've got Paul.
Yeah.
We've got Paul in prison in front of us. However, then why did she keep it secret till she's in court?
Yeah.
That wouldn't make any sense if that was her agenda. So I think possibly could be genuine. And apparently, obviously, like I already said, we don't know much about the world of child sex trafficking. It's underground. We don't know what happens. Apparently, they do just chuck kids out on the street, and obviously after however many years a kid can't just rock up back through the door and be like, I'm home now. Well, what happened to you? Oh, don't worry about that. And
depending on what age they were taken, they probably wouldn't even know
any different
where to go. Like, it's already ingrained in them at that point. Do they even remember their parents? Do they even remember where they live? I don't know.
Noreen kept the porch light on their house for years after he disappeared, hoping that he would come back. But this says he knocked on the door of their apartment. So I'm like, she must have moved after the divorce, so how would he even know?
Guess you would look her up in a phone book, because phone books would be a thing still.
Yeah, that's very true. There would be ways of him finding out for sure.
Yeah.
But it's just one of those things which really polarises the case. But apparently she wrote a book, actually. This is what I was going to talk about next anyway, but she published a book in 2000 titled Why Johnny Can't Come Home, explaining the disappearance and exposing the realities of child sex trafficking. So this was when she was explaining, because people were like, well, if he came to see you, why doesn't he just come home? But imagine if a child who had been sex trafficked just rocked up after all that time, was like, I'm home, and just went about living a normal life. You couldn't, because the people who are worried that they're going to get exposed, they're going to come and take you out.
And not even just that, the media as well. Like, you wouldn't be able to live a normal life, because there would be people wanting your story, like, constantly in contact with you.
And also they're going to threaten the family as well. So these kids are going to keep quiet. So they live under false identities, which is, it's just so unnecessary and sad. Like, just
but
so awful.
I probably believe that he might have approached her, because if he's like his mum, and clearly he is, because he's been confident enough to run away, to write on a bill, like, to do all these things, I can imagine he probably would go to her door.
And maybe he just really wanted his mum to have
a bit of peace
by being like, I'm out of it now, but this is the life I've got to live.
Yeah.
I've had a horrendous time, but keep advocating for what you're doing, though, because, you know, you're saving other children. Like, she created that organisation.
Whole other department,
Yeah, so it might have been something like that, but yeah, it's just wild. In 2006, Noreen was left a stack of pictures at her door, and one of the pictures was a man who looked like he could be dead with something around his throat. So I think, because this one was a man and not a boy, I'll go into the other pictures in a second, but I think this might have been the people involved being like, look what can happen to you. Stop.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was weird. And then the other pictures were of boys tied up and gagged. And one of the photos appeared to resemble 12-year-old Johnny, which I can see, if they're the type of people who like inflicting emotional pain,
that'll do it.
This would be horrible. Yeah. So maybe it's like, shut up, this is what we're capable of, this is what we've done, almost mocking her, and then being like, this is what's going to happen to you.
Yeah, so, we've already done this, look at what we've done, so look what we can do if you keep going.
So she was able to trace the pictures to a child pornography site, and just over a week later, Des Moines police received an anonymous letter claiming that someone has played a joke on a grieving mother, and the picture she believes is Johnny is actually 3 boys in Tampa, Florida, challenging each other to an escape contest. You can actually see these images online relating to the Johnny Gosch case. Obviously, don't look if you don't want to upset yourself, because it is really distressing, but to me, doesn't look like 3 boys challenging themselves to an escape contest.
And that is the weirdest thing. Have you ever... Did you ever play that as a childhood game?
This happened in another case, the Tara Calico case, where there was a picture that surfaced of a woman who looked like Tara, tied up and gagged, and people thought it was someone just playing escape. So I don't know if it's a thing in America, but we didn't play it in the UK.
No, that is not a UK game.
An investigation in Florida had taken place before Johnny even went missing, and the boys were interviewed and confirmed they had willingly posed for the photograph. However, the investigator who gave Noreen this information, so this investigator was from Tampa, Florida, who had investigated the photo, he couldn't say that the photo that he had seen years ago, because by this point we're in 2006, Johnny disappeared in 1982.
Yeah.
This happened before Johnny's disappearance. He was like, I can't tell you if they're the same picture.
Oh my god.
But I can tell you that, don't worry about it, it's just a joke. It's so bizarre. So that's still like a red herring in the case, because lots of people have looked at it and been like, oh no, the foot's too big for it to be that of Johnny's, like, relative to scale, but all these things. So it's a very polarising bit of evidence. But I don't think that this policeman coming forward and being like, I investigated this years ago, so it's got nothing to do with it, doesn't hold any weight, because he's literally said, oh, well, I can't remember if it's the same.
Really though, I don't know if that makes much difference, because there's so much other stuff.
Yeah.
Like, really, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Like, clearly this did happen to him. There's so much more out there.
Literally.
Than whether this one picture is him.
Yeah. It's clear that Noreen has been a fighter in this case and persisted throughout to shed light on potential corruption happening with powerful individuals in the US. Before I go into a conspiracy that came out also in 2006, I want to end this section with a quote from Noreen that I think shows her strength. She said, quote, "Was I ever like this before? I've had an eventful life, but I never had such a traumatic big thing happen in my life until Johnny was taken. You have a choice. Are you going to rise up and do something, or are you going to sit there and feel bad?" Which I think
fair play
sums her up. Like, yeah, amazing woman. In 2006, a conspiracy theory was buzzing round on the internet following a White House press conference. Benossi's claims included that Johnny had been part of a callboy service for the White House that Lawrence King rang, which is just so disgusting. And in 2003 to 2005, a suspicious reporter appeared in the press pool for the White House. He worked for Talon News and his name was Jeff Gannon. Suspicion arose when there was questions from press to George Bush, and Jeff asked a question that people thought seemed too friendly and was also factually inaccurate. So his colleagues at Talon News began to look into him and found that Jeff Gannon wasn't his real name. His real name was James Guckert, which is such a gross last name. Guckert.
It's very guttural.
Yeah, I just hate saying it. And they also found out that Guckert had been a former male escort named Bulldog.
So what, he was trying to call him out subtly in a press conference? I don't really
know. I don't know what was said in the press conference, but it was enough to stir
He
suspicion.
was trying to, like, shit him up by being there.
Maybe. So the colleagues basically looked into him, found out about his past as an escort, but also realised he had, like, no media qualifications. So he had, like, some, like, real light training courses, but not really much experience. So they were like, how on earth did you get into the press pool at the White House? Because apparently that's, like, so difficult to get into. Only the best of the best journalists are there. So this little Jeff Gannon waltzed in and asked a question to the president that it was really weird. You may have noticed that James Guckert, Jeff Gannon and Johnny Gosch share the same initials, and I believe their middle names also share the same initial.
Okay.
So I believe one of their middle names is David, which I believe is Johnny, but I'm not 100%, so I don't want to say for certain. But the other ones begin with D.
Right.
So JDG. Ted Gunderson, a retired FBI agent who investigated the Franklin cover-up, says he has a credible source who is another child victim who stated that Jeff Gannon was actually Johnny Gosch. Paul Bonossi said he doesn't know if Johnny is Jeff, but does know Johnny is living under a new identity. Another retired police officer, Jim Rothstein, who has been looking into the Gosch case, said that if he was Jeff Gannon, this would actually make perfect sense for a former child victim to be involved like this, as it fits the MO and he looks like Johnny would look if he was older. So apparently this is like a common thing for trafficked children to get inside of the place like this. I don't know.
What you mean, to get back into the ring?
Or maybe the ring want to keep them close, so they give them positions that could keep them close. But some people also believe that Johnny might be working there under his new identity to basically bring them down from the inside. Like you said, like, was his questioning that way? But then I think he still needed to get in there, and with little qualifications they would have had to let him in. But apparently this retired police officer says this is absolutely what we see, so it would fit the narrative.
It makes sense that they would go back into the ring that they were taken in, because like they would be fucked up that is their family in a way, and like what they know, so you want to go back to what you know, even though it's horrendous. And then you're and then you're like, but you come in as a position of power, and then you, not saying that he's creating the cycle again, I'm just saying that is common, that then like people, I don't know, if you're an abused as a child, you potentially become an abuser, like that kind of thing. Not that everyone does that, but you know what I mean.
Paul Bonossi didn't, like, that's...
like you just get indoctrinated. And
Noreen has obviously heard about this. She said she doesn't know if he's Johnny or not. She said it's hard to tell from just seeing images or video of him and not seeing him in person. Noreen has actually asked him, though, if he would be willing to take a DNA test, where Gannon said he would be happy, but in the same breath he was like, I'd be happy to take a DNA test, but I've grown up with people all my life who know me, so it's not really necessary. And then he was on a radio show who was asking him, so would you be happy to take a DNA test? That's a yes, you've said you're happy. And then he wouldn't confirm it's a yes. So it sounded like he's saying yes, but actually I'm not going to. But just to
stop the questions.
Yeah, I'm not going to, but I'm happy to. Which, then you're not happy to.
Yeah.
But then people say, well, he's already using a fake name. Does he just not want other things coming out in his DNA? He might have skipped out on loads of children's child support, for all we know, and he's just like, I don't want to be linked to that.
But also, why would they ask him to do it because the whole reason he's under a fake name is to protect himself and his family. Why would he then do a DNA test?
So that's another thing that people say, like, if it is Johnny Gosch, like, let's just hope that his life now is a lot better than the life he has been thought to have been living.
Yeah.
Let's not force it out into the open. But then I think if something is so concrete as DNA was forced out into the open and he got into a White House press pool, would that then blow the lid, and then they've got too many fires to physically put out that it's going to actually make moves to bring it down?
Yeah.
From the inside? Like, would this be so much of a big thing that they can't do anything?
Probably. I mean, you can't argue with that, can you?
Yeah. And they're going to be like, oh, so if this is Johnny Gosch, how has he been let into the White House? Oh my God, this is what happened to him. And they would, you know, the good policemen out there, hopefully, the good people, the good guys would help, but who knows. Jeff also said he's much older than Johnny would have been and has friends and family that has known him all his life, yet there is still no confirmation that he is or isn't Johnny. Jeff also had a website called www.jeffgannon.com, so original, where he posted I know, where he posted an article soon after the conspiracies arose called Hiding in Plain Sight, which
but he
people
could be playing
obviously
into it.
latched onto and said, oh, he's sending out cryptic messages, but he could have just played into it for more publicity.
What was the question he asked?
I don't know.
That would be interesting.
I should have, I didn't hear about that when I was looking it up. I could not go over everything that happened in this this case. There is a lot that I haven't spoken about, surprisingly, considering we've been talking for almost an hour and a half now about it. But it is such a big case and there are so many things that have happened. But I hope I've given like a good enough overview to get a sense of what the hell went on in this case.
Yeah.
But again, I'm going to finish it on a quote from Noreen that I said in the teaser of, just because you don't want to believe something is true does not mean it's not true. Because I think a lot of people think of child trafficking, I don't want it to happen here, so I don't believe it happens here.
Yeah.
If we don't talk about it, it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
It absolutely does happen. And whether it happened to Johnny or not, because we still don't really know,
it still happens.
It happens. And I mean, even if you go and look into Paul Benossi's account, it's horrendous. Because we know that he was.
Yeah.
So even if he never knew Johnny Gosch, the stuff that happened to him still happened to him. And, you know, it's just horrendous. And then I thought, how many other parents have been told by anonymous people calling them to stop making waves, or you're dead, or been told by the police the stuff that she was said and just gave up? And not saying that's wrong to do. Like I can
imagine it's that's a lot to push through.
Yeah, like I said, some people are potatoes and some people are eggs, and I think I'm like the salt that just gets dissolved in hot water because I just fall apart so easily. So I wouldn't blame anyone for just lying down after that and kind of thinking, oh, the police have so much resistance for what I'm doing, maybe if I cooperate, they'll cooperate with me.
Or just that I am one person.
Scared. Yeah.
What
but
can
Noreen,
I do? Yeah.
Yeah. To her testament, she kept pushing for answers, and unfortunately, I think she's probably, if that meeting with Johnny happened, she's got the answers, but she wants to push for other children.
Well, she's made change.
Yeah, she has.
So, yeah.
So that is, you know, even though it's so sad that we need organisations like that, it's a good thing that's come out of the case. Like, there's change that has happened because of Johnny's disappearance.
Yeah.
But I hope everyone's enjoyed the case, found it interesting. I find it weird saying enjoyed about a true crime case, because people don't really enjoy it. It's more of like an interesting thing.
Yeah.
And it's good to spread awareness. Because like we just said, you don't want to believe it happens, but it does happen. This episode hasn't been PC, so YouTube's probably not going to like this. So if you like the episode, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel.
Let's try and beat the algorithm that's going to hate us and bring us down.
Yeah, no clips will be posted to TikTok from this one.
But no, thanks for watching, guys. And as always, please comment what you think about the case. If you have any thoughts, if you think anything different to us or you agree, we want to know. As always, guys, stay spooky, stay kooky.
See you later.
Bye.
Spooky and kooky, mystery and wonder. Feel the magic under. Spooky and kooky.